There is a moment in every life when the world seems to dim, not always suddenly. Sometimes the light fades so gradually that we do not even realize the dusk has been approaching. Sometimes it happens in an instant, like a flame blown out by an unexpected wind. But the experience is universal, a quiet, private darkness that appears inside us, around us, or through us. A sense of disorientation, a sense of being untethered from the familiar lines of the world. Darkness is not just the absence of light. It is uncertainty. It is the unknown. It is the realm where the answers we relied on no longer hold, where the mind reaches out, searching for shape and meaning, and instead touches something vast and undefined. For a moment, breathe gently and feel the way the unknown lives in your own body. The slight tightening, the instinctive alertness, the quiet question rising in the background of thought. This is the beginning of every descent. Humans have feared darkness since long before written memory. Our earliest ancestors scanned the night with wide, watchful eyes, not because they were weak, but because they were alive. In the dark lived the predators whose footsteps blended with the wind. In the dark lived the dangers they could not predict. The unknown was not metaphor in their world. It was survival. Today, the threats are different, quieter, and more internal. But the body remembers. The nervous system still reacts to uncertainty as if something with sharp teeth waits in the shadows. We call these shadows by many names: fear, loss, grief, trauma, loneliness, identity fracture, transitions we did not choose, memories that will not loosen their grip. And yet, within this darkness, something else begins to stir. Something older than fear. Something woven into the architecture of our evolution, our biology, and our stories. The instinct not only to survive, but to understand, to endure, to transform. As you listen, you may notice your breath slowing just slightly. A small softening in the shoulders. A gentle grounding. This is not to put you to sleep, but to help you walk into the darker landscapes of the mind with steadiness. Darkness deserves respect, not resistance. It is an ancient teacher, one that appears when life demands something deeper from us. This journey is not about pushing away the night, nor pretending the shadows do not exist. It is about entering them with awareness, learning their language, and discovering what waits on the other side of the descent. For in every myth, every psychology, every nervous system, and every human heart, darkness is not the end of the story. It is the threshold. Take a gentle breath. Feel the ground beneath you. And let us step into the first chapter of this journey. The nature of darkness. Darkness has always been our first great mirror. Long before humans could speak, write, or imagine complex stories, they understood the dark as something alive, something carrying meaning, something that shaped the way the body moved and the way the mind prepared for the unknown. To explore darkness is to explore the most ancient part of the human experience, a layer of consciousness built long before civilization, language, or memory. When we think of darkness today, we often imagine psychological or emotional states: fear, isolation, sadness, confusion. But these feelings are simply the modern expression of an evolutionary truth. Darkness signals uncertainty, and uncertainty has always carried weight. In nature, not knowing was dangerous. A rustle in the grass could mean wind or a predator. A shifting shadow could mean nothing or everything. To survive, the human nervous system became attuned to the faintest sign of threat. This evolutionary inheritance lives inside each of us. It is why the unknown still tightens the chest. Why a lack of clarity can feel like falling. Why emotional darkness, heartbreak, grief, loss, internal struggle feels physically heavy. Because the body does not distinguish between external uncertainty and internal uncertainty. To the nervous system, the dark is the dark. The unknown is the unknown. Take a moment here to notice your body. Noticing does not change anything. It simply brings the unknown into awareness, where the mind can hold it more gently. Feel the breath entering, leaving. A calm reminder that the body is not living in an ancient forest, but in this moment where you are safe enough to listen. Humans do not fear darkness solely because of what might be inside it, but because of what it reflects back at us. Darkness forces us to confront our own thoughts, our own fears, our own memories. The external world quiets, and suddenly the internal world becomes louder. This is why night has always been the time of introspection, the time when unresolved worries rise to the surface, the time when the mind begins to wander toward the places we avoid during the day. Yet darkness is not only a threat. It is also a space of potential. In every culture, darkness holds dual meaning. It is both danger and origin, fear and possibility, the place where things end and the place where things begin. Seeds sprout in the dark soil. Stars form in the dark vacuum of space. Every human begins life in the quiet darkness of the womb. And every moment of self-discovery begins by stepping into what we do not yet understand. This duality is deeply psychological. Darkness is not merely an emotional state. It is a symbolic environment where the mind reorganizes itself. It is the space where identity reshapes, where beliefs are questioned, where old patterns break. To move through darkness is to undergo change, whether we want it or not. Breathe gently. Feel the simple act of inhaling, exhaling. Darkness is easier to navigate when accompanied by awareness. In many ways, humans are drawn to light not simply because it reveals the world, but because it gives us a temporary escape from our inner landscapes. Light distracts. Light reassures. Light keeps us moving. But it is in the dark that we truly slow down, that we begin to feel the subtle layers of our own existence, that the psyche begins its quiet reorganization. This is why many of life's most difficult experiences feel like entering a night within oneself. The loss of a relationship, the collapse of a dream, the death of a loved one, the breaking of something we thought was unbreakable, the sudden shift in who we believed we were. Each of these moments turns off a light we relied on. And what remains is the vast, uncharted territory of darkness. But darkness is not a void. It is a landscape. It has texture. It has shape. It has meaning. And when we learn to navigate it, we begin to understand the deeper architecture of the psyche. The unknown shapes the mind far more than certainty ever could. Certainty comforts, but uncertainty transforms. As you breathe, notice a slight softness spreading through the body. A reminder that it is possible to approach darkness in a grounded, curious way, rather than in fear. Darkness asks you to slow down, to listen, to sense rather than react. And so, as we continue this journey, we will move gradually from the symbolic nature of darkness into the biology that underlies it. For what we feel as emotional shadow is mirrored in the nervous system. The body reacts to darkness long before the mind interprets it. Let us now step into that deeper layer. The nervous system in crisis. The nervous system in crisis. Darkness is not just a metaphor. It is a biological event. When a human being encounters uncertainty, overwhelm, emotional shock, or sudden change, the body responds as if the world has dimmed. The nervous system shifts its patterns. The brain begins to search for threats. The heart prepares for impact. The ancient machinery of survival awakens. To understand inner darkness, we must first understand the body's response to danger, because emotional struggle often begins as physiology before it becomes psychology. Take a gentle breath here. Feel the way the air enters, moves, leaves. This is the body grounding itself, even as we explore something intense. The human nervous system is built on three primary states: a state of safety and connection, a state of stress and mobilization, and a state of shutdown or collapse. These states are not moral or personal. They are evolutionary. They are the blueprint of survival. When the brain senses uncertainty, even if that uncertainty is emotional rather than physical, it begins by activating the sympathetic nervous system. This is the system of alertness, of vigilance, of readiness. Heart rate increases. Breathing becomes shallow. Muscles tighten. The brain's threat detection center, the amygdala, becomes louder. It begins scanning for danger, searching for anything that might restore predictability. Emotional darkness often begins here, with a heightened sense of alertness, a subtle tension in the chest or stomach, a feeling that something is not right. We may not know what the threat is, but the body behaves as if one exists. For a moment, notice the air around your body, the quiet space. Let the shoulders soften just slightly, not as instruction, but as permission. You are exploring, not bracing. When stress becomes overwhelming, the body escalates its response. Cortisol is released to help mobilize energy. Adrenaline sharpens focus. The body prepares to act. This is why emotional crises often create a physical sense of urgency, racing thoughts, restlessness, a feeling of being trapped inside your own mind. But when the body determines that fight or flight is no longer an effective strategy, when the stress is too great, too prolonged, or too inescapable, another shift occurs. The system begins to conserve energy. It moves into the third state, a shutdown, a collapse. This shutdown is not weakness. It is protection. It is a biological way of preventing further overwhelm. The breath becomes shallow. The mind becomes foggy. A numbness spreads through emotion. The world feels heavy, distant, muted. This is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of too much feeling for the body to safely process. Many people describe this state as a kind of inner night, a dimming of connection, meaning, and vitality. It can feel like depression. It can feel like dissociation. It can feel like emotional exhaustion that sits deep in the bones. In trauma research, this state is understood as a form of survival. When an experience is too large, too sudden, or too painful, the body protects itself by withdrawing into darkness. Not metaphorical darkness, but a neurological quiet, a lowering of internal volume, a reduction of sensation, a retreat from intensity. The nervous system does not distinguish between emotional pain and physical danger because both require safety. Both require protection. Both require care. Take a slow, comfortable breath. Feel the way the chest gently rises, gently falls. Even the act of noticing breath begins to stabilize the system because awareness signals safety to the brain. You are not in danger. You are observing, reflecting, understanding. When people say they are overwhelmed, broken, lost, or sinking into darkness, they are often describing the nervous system's transition through these states. First, hyper-alertness. then hyperactivation, then shutdown. Understanding this does not remove the pain, but it removes the shame, the sense that something is wrong with you, the belief that you are failing. You are not failing. Your body is adapting. Your nervous system is responding exactly as it was designed to respond when life becomes too heavy for clarity, too uncertain for calm, or too painful for stability. This biological understanding becomes especially important when darkness deepens into emotional descent, grief, loss, trauma, and the breaking of something within. For the nervous system does not only react to immediate danger, it reacts to meaning, to change, to the collapse of things we once relied on. The next step in this journey leads us into that descent, not as pathology, not as weakness, but as a deeply human process of being undone. Before we move there, take a moment, a quiet breath, a soft release of tension in the jaw or hands, a gentle awareness of your seat, your body, your presence in this moment. Darkness becomes more navigable when we meet it with steadiness. And now, with that steadiness growing, we step into the emotional underworld. Emotional descent. There is a moment in every life when the emotional ground beneath us shifts. Sometimes it cracks suddenly, like ice giving way beneath unprepared feet. Other times it erodes slowly, quietly, almost politely, until one day we realize we are standing in a landscape we no longer recognize. This is the beginning of the descent. Not a descent into failure, but into truth, into the depths of everything we have held, carried, avoided, or endured. Emotional descent is not a single feeling. It is a spectrum, a gravity pulling us inward, a dimming of the old world and a slow, uncertain emergence into something new. It begins with a sense of disorientation, a question whispered somewhere inside. What is happening to me? Take a slow breath here, a gentle inhalation, a soft exhalation. Let this moment become an anchor as we walk deeper into the terrain of loss, grief, and inner collapse. Human beings are wired to seek stability. We build identities, relationships, routines, and dreams that give shape to our days and meaning to our lives. But when one of these pillars falls, a relationship ending, a loved one dying, a dream dissolving, a sense of self breaking, the entire structure trembles. The psyche, like any architecture, is built on foundations. And when a foundation cracks, the whole interior shifts. Emotional descent often begins with disbelief, a quiet numbness, a strange sense that reality has changed before we were ready. The nervous system, overwhelmed, tries to soften the impact. It gives us a temporary cushion, a fog between us and what is happening. This is not weakness. It is mercy, a biological kindness. But eventually, the numbness thins, and beneath it rises a deeper, more primal experience: grief. Grief is not only the pain of loss, it is the psychological restructuring that follows. It is the slow recognition that something once woven into us has been torn away, and the body feels it as deeply as the mind. Take a breath. Let it be simple. Let it be human. Grief lives in the chest, in the throat, in the stomach, in the heaviness behind the eyes. It is not a thought. It is a full-bodied response to change. Trauma, too, is a form of descent. Not because it breaks us, but because it overwhelms the system's ability to integrate what happened. Trauma pulls us into the underworld without warning. It thrusts us into darkness before we have time to gather a single light. And yet, trauma is not merely the event itself. It is the nervous system's reaction. The freezing, the fragmentation, the internal collapse. The sense of being trapped in a moment that will not release its grip. Emotional descent is also shaped by loss that does not come from catastrophe, but from accumulation. Small disappointments, quiet suffering, loneliness stretched across years, dreams deferred, unspoken grief. The hidden, private ruptures that never made a sound, but still carved into the self. When descent comes, the world feels unfamiliar. Colors dull. Time thickens. The mind becomes a labyrinth of what-ifs and why-me's. Every thought bends toward the weight of the moment. Every memory is filtered through ache. Pause for a breath. Slow, steady, dimly, beneath the pain, there is still a presence within you. A witness. A steady observer who remains even as everything else shifts. You are not the darkness. You are the one moving through it. People often describe emotional descent as falling apart. But in many psychological traditions, falling apart is not the end. It is the necessary unraveling before transformation. The self that existed before cannot survive the change that is coming. Something must loosen. Something must break open. Something must dissolve so that something truer can emerge. Mythology understands this well. In countless cultures, descent into darkness is the first act of rebirth. Heroes fall. Gods die. Figures enter caves, oceans, forests, underworlds, and graves. Not to be punished, but to be remade. But before the remaking, there is the breaking. The quiet collapsing inward. The moment when the old self cannot continue carrying the weight it once held. Loss. Grief. Trauma. These are not interruptions to life. They are part of the architecture of human experience. They shape us, not through their cruelty, but through their ability to reveal what we value, what we fear, and what we must eventually find within ourselves. Take another breath. Feel the body gently rise and fall. You are safe in this moment. You are witnessing your own humanity, not drowning in it. As descent deepens, something hidden begins to emerge. Parts of ourselves we pushed away, emotions we buried, memories we avoided, patterns we outgrew. These are the shadows, not monsters, but neglected fragments of the self. To understand them, we step next into the realm of the shadow, a place of psychological truth, a place where the hidden parts of who we are rise to meet us. Let the breath soften, let the mind settle, and let us walk deeper into the inner night, the shadow self. Every human carries a hidden world within them, a world made of unspoken fears, muted desires, forgotten wounds, and impulses we learn to bury in order to survive, to belong, to be loved. This hidden world is what Carl Jung called the shadow, not because it is evil or dangerous, but because it is unseen. Because it lives in the dim places of the psyche, behind the personality we present to the world. When we enter inner darkness, the shadow rises, not to threaten us, but to be acknowledged, to be integrated, to be known. Take a slow breath. Feel the quiet space around your body. The shadow is not something out there. It is something within a companion we have ignored for most of our lives. From the moment we are born, we begin shaping a persona, a self that fits, a self that is acceptable, a self that helps us navigate family, culture, relationships, and identity. To create this persona, we must hide the parts of ourselves that others reject, misunderstand, or fear. But these parts do not disappear. They simply move inward. The shadow holds everything we learned to suppress. Anger we never expressed. Sadness we felt ashamed of. Vulnerability we hid. Parts of our personality that were punished, mocked, or misunderstood. Talents we feared. Desires we believed were wrong. Strength we doubted. Pain we denied. The shadow is not only darkness. It is also potential, the gold buried beneath the surface. When emotional descent occurs, the boundary between the conscious self and the shadow begins to thin. The cracks in our lives illuminate the places we have not wanted to look. Grief softens the walls. Loss loosens the structures. Trauma shakes loose the buried pieces. Darkness does not create the shadow. It simply reveals it. Breathe gently here. Let the inhale arrive. Let the exhale soften. You are not trying to fix anything. You are simply listening. The shadow is not a monster waiting in the depths of your mind. It is a child sitting in the dark, waiting to be acknowledged. It is the version of you who felt too much, too soon. The version punished for their sensitivity. The version who carried shame that was never theirs to hold. The version who learned that to be accepted, they must hide. Meeting the shadow requires courage, not because the shadow is dangerous, but because it is honest. It shows you the parts of yourself you forgot to love, the wounds you pretended were healed, the emotions you feared might break you. To face the shadow is to face your humanity in its rawest form. But here is the deeper truth: the shadow also holds your strength, your creativity, your intuition, your authenticity. Everything you exiled returns in the descent, asking to be seen, to be forgiven, to be reintegrated. The shadow says, do not heal by becoming someone else. Heal by becoming more fully yourself. When the shadow rises in darkness, many people feel fear. This is natural. The mind resists what it does not understand. But if you pause, breathe, and listen, you will feel something else beneath the fear recognition. As if some part of you is whispering, yes, I remember this. Because the shadow is not foreign. It is familiar. As Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the work of descent. Not to escape the dark, but to understand its message. In emotional descent, the shadow becomes a guide. It reveals the patterns that have shaped your life. It shows you the old wounds that still influence your choices. It brings clarity to the habits formed from pain rather than freedom. And it invites you to reclaim the fragmented parts of yourself. Pause here. Feel the breath move through you. Soft, even, present. This is how we create space for the shadow to transform, not through force, but through awareness. Across cultures, stories of descent into darkness often include an encounter with a shadow figure, a mentor disguised as a monster, a reflection disguised as an enemy, a truth disguised as fear. These figures represent the shadow self, the unacknowledged inner companion who holds the key to transformation. To enter the shadow is to enter myth. And to enter myth is to enter the timeless human story, the descent into the underworld. Let the breath settle. Let the body rest. We now step from psychology into mythology, from the inner shadow into the ancient tales of darkness that have guided humanity for thousands of years. Journey with me into the mythic night, mythic darkness. Every culture on earth tells a story about entering the dark. Not because people were superstitious, but because they understood something profound. Darkness is a universal passage, a threshold every human must cross when life changes, breaks, or demands transformation. Mythology is not a collection of old stories. It is psychology written in symbols. The underworld is not a place beneath the ground. It is a place beneath the surface of the self. When ancient people described a hero descending into night, a cave, an ocean, or a realm of shadows, they were describing what happens within the mind during emotional collapse. Take a slow breath. Feel the quiet around you. Imagine, not visually but emotionally, the sense of stepping away from the familiar world and into a deeper layer of reality. That is the essence of mythic darkness. In Greek mythology, Persephone is taken into the underworld, initiating a cycle of death and rebirth. Her descent represents loss. Her return represents renewal. But the crucial part is what happens in the middle, the stillness, the waiting, the transformation within the dark. In Sumerian myth, the goddess Inanna descends into the underworld, layer by layer removing symbols of identity, her crown, her jewels, her garments, until she stands naked before the shadow of herself. This is not punishment. It is revelation. To enter the dark is to shed illusions, to meet truth without armor. In the Egyptian tradition, the sun god Ra travels through the underworld each night, battling serpents of chaos before rising again in the morning. This is the cycle of the psyche. Every night, a descent. Every dawn, a rebirth. Every struggle, a movement toward clarity. Norse mythology tells of Odin hanging from the world tree for 9 nights, wounded and suspended between life and death in order to gain wisdom. His descent is voluntary. He enters the darkness not because he must, but because knowledge demands it. These stories may seem distant, but their emotional truth is immediate. When a human loses someone they love, when a dream collapses, when identity fractures, when trauma cuts into the self, they too descend. They too confront the shadows. They too stand stripped of everything they thought they were. Take another gentle breath. Let the air move slowly in, slowly out. This breathing is your rope in the cave, your small torch in the mythic night. Across cultures, the descent into darkness follows a pattern, a departure from the known, a crossing of a threshold, a confrontation with the shadow, a death symbolic, emotional, or psychological, and eventually a return. But the return is never to the old self. It is a rebirth. The individual steps out of the darkness carrying something new, an insight, a strength, a transformation. Joseph Campbell, studying myth across civilizations, called this the hero's journey. But in truth, it is not only heroes who descend. It is all of us. The journey is woven into the structure of being human. When you go through grief, you enter myth. When you face trauma, you enter myth. When you lose your way, you enter myth. When the world collapses and you stand in the rubble of what was once your life, you enter the underworld. And like every mythic traveler, you are changed by what you encounter there. But mythic darkness is not only filled with monsters, shadows, or trials. It is also filled with silence, stillness, the absence of noise and distraction. This is why many people fear darkness, not because of what is in it, but because of what is revealed when everything else is taken away. In the mythology of the Pacific Islands, navigators learned to read the dark ocean by sensing the movement of waves beneath their boats. No maps, no stars, only intuition, only feel. This too is a metaphor for the human journey through inner darkness. We learn to navigate by sensation, by instinct, by small shifts within us, not by clarity or logic alone. In Japanese Shinto tradition, caves are sacred places of rebirth. Heroes enter them to gain wisdom, to face trials, or to emerge transformed. The darkness inside the cave is not an absence, but a womb, a place of becoming. And in the Aboriginal traditions of Australia, the dark interior land, the Dreamtime, is where ancestors and truths reside. The dark is not feared. It is revered. It is the place where identity is traced back to its origins. These stories show us that darkness is not singular. It is layered. It is symbolic. It is holy. It is terrifying. It is transformative. Take a soft breath. Let the body relax into the moment. We are moving deeper, but also clearer. Mythic darkness teaches us that the journey inward is not only painful, but meaningful. Yet, even in myth, the descent often brings the same challenge we experience in real-life isolation. The sense that no one can walk this path with us. The quiet ache of being alone with our suffering. And so, from mythic darkness, we now enter a more intimate terrain, the psychological experience of loneliness. Not loneliness as absence, but loneliness as weight, as silence, as a companion that meets us in the darkest places of the mind. Let us breathe once more and step into the emptiness that so often accompanies emotional night, isolation and loneliness. There is a unique quiet that forms inside a human being when they feel alone. Not the peaceful quiet of stillness, but the hollow quiet of absence. A silence that echoes rather than comforts. A silence that turns every thought inward, amplifying the sense that we are walking through darkness without a guide, without a witness, without a hand reaching back toward ours. Loneliness is not simply being without people. It is being without understanding. It is the experience of carrying something that feels too heavy, too complex, or too painful for others to hold with us. It is the emotional echo chamber that emerges when suffering has no place to go. Take a slow breath here. A gentle inhale. A soft release. Feel your presence in the space around you, even as we explore the deep weight of isolation. When emotional descent begins, loneliness often appears beside it. Darkness narrows our perception. It closes the distance between ourselves and our inner world. We become more aware of our own thoughts and less aware of the world beyond them. The nervous system, in states of fear, stress, or collapse, shifts our attention inward for survival. This inward shift is helpful in crisis, but it comes with a cost, the feeling of being separated from others. In psychology, loneliness is understood as an unmet need for attunement. Attunement is the experience of being seen, heard, and understood by another nervous system. It is how infants learn that the world responds to them. It is how adults feel connected and safe. When attunement collapses through loss, conflict, trauma, or emotional overwhelm, the mind enters a kind of inner night. We feel alone, not only because no one is physically near us, but because it feels like no one can reach us where we are. Loneliness is the darkness within the darkness. Breathe gently. Let the shoulders soften, even slightly. You are not alone now. You are witnessing, reflecting, understanding. Biologically, loneliness has profound effects. The brain interprets isolation as danger because, in our evolutionary past, separation from the group meant vulnerability. The nervous system becomes more alert. The mind becomes hyper-aware of threat. Negative thoughts grow louder. Memories of abandonment rise. This is not imagination. It is survival circuitry. But the deepest loneliness is not caused by being physically alone. It is caused by the feeling that our internal world cannot be shared. People can stand beside us, love us, support us, and still we may feel alone if the weight we carry feels indescribable. If the darkness we move through feels too vast for words. Many people in the midst of emotional descent report the same quiet thought. No one understands this. Or, no one can reach me here. This thought does not mean that connection is impossible. It means that the descent has taken us into a layer of the self that is intensely private, intensely raw, and intensely vulnerable. In mythology, heroes who descend into the underworld almost always do so alone. This is symbolic truth. Transformation requires solitude, not isolation forever, but a period of inwardness. A period where we meet ourselves without distraction, where we confront truth without the influence of others, where we listen not to external voices, but to the voice within the dark. Loneliness during descent is not punishment. It is part of the process of shedding old identities, old defenses, old patterns. It is a necessary quiet, the silence before the emergence of something new. Take another breath. Feel a slight expansion in the chest, even if gentle, even if subtle. Loneliness becomes more bearable when we name it, when we understand it, when we stop interpreting it as a personal failure. But loneliness also reveals something deeper. Humans are shaped by suffering. Pain does not simply wound, it sculpts identity. It alters belief. It shifts the architecture of the self. And so, our next step is to look directly at suffering. Not as cruelty, not as fate, but as something that changes us profoundly, painfully, and, at times, beautifully. Let your breath soften. Let your awareness settle. We now enter the heart of the descent, the psychology of suffering. Suffering is one of the oldest forces shaping human identity. Older than language, older than culture, older even than thought itself. It is woven into the nervous system, etched into myth, embedded in philosophy, and carried in every lineage across history. To be human is to suffer. And not because life is cruel, but because we are conscious. We feel, we care, we attach, we hope. And when these connections are threatened or broken, the heart aches in a way no other creature fully understands. Take a slow breath. Let it move gently through you. Suffering is heavy, but it is also meaningful. Here, we explore it with clarity, with compassion, and with depth. Suffering begins where control ends. When something we trusted breaks. When someone we love leaves. When the future we imagined disappears. When trauma strikes. When the world becomes unpredictable. Suffering is the collision between expectation and reality, between what we hoped for and what we received instead. But suffering is not just emotional. It is biological. The nervous system contracts. The stress response ignites. The brain loops through memories, meaning-making, and threat detection. Pain becomes not only a feeling, but a process, a full-bodied experience. Psychologists have long observed that suffering changes the architecture of the self. It reshapes beliefs. It redefines priorities. It alters identity. This is because suffering forces the mind to confront truth, uncontrollable truth. And the confrontation breaks open the deeper layers of what we are. Breathe gently. Notice the quiet. Suffering becomes clearer when we approach it with presence rather than resistance. There are several types of suffering, each shaping identity in different ways. There is loss, which tears away something we once believed was permanent. There is grief, which forces us to live in the empty space left behind. There is trauma, which fractures the continuity of experience. There is fear, which narrows perception and shrinks the world. There is shame, which turns pain inward and attacks the self. There is loneliness, which isolates us from sources of comfort. And there is meaninglessness, which erodes the sense of direction that guides our choices. Each form of suffering whispers a different message. Loss whispers, you are vulnerable. Grief whispers, you cared deeply. Trauma whispers, something was too much, too fast, too soon. Fear whispers, you must protect yourself. Shame whispers, you are not enough. Loneliness whispers, you are unseen. Meaninglessness whispers, the story has collapsed. These messages shape identity, not because they are true, but because they feel true in the moment of descent. Pause for a soft breath. Let the air move in. Let it move out. Awareness loosens the grip of suffering, even slightly. Philosophers have long tried to understand the role of pain in human life. To the Buddha, suffering was inevitable, but liberation came from understanding it. To the Stoics, suffering was a teacher, a sculptor of inner strength. To existentialists, suffering was the birthplace of authenticity, the moment we confront the absurdity of life and choose who we will become. In neuroscience, suffering is understood as a combination of sensory pain and emotional interpretation. The body reacts, the mind explains, and together they create the experience we call suffering. This is why two people can undergo the same event, but experience it differently. Suffering is not just what happens to us. It is what happens within us. But here is a deeper truth. Suffering cracks the outer shell of the self. It exposes what lies beneath. It reveals what we value. It forces us to examine what truly matters. It strips away illusions and leaves only the essential. And in that stripping away, in that raw exposure, something transformative begins. Breathe slowly. Let the exhale soften the body. You are not escaping suffering. You are witnessing its architecture. Pain shapes identity because it interrupts the flow of life. It creates a pause, a fracture, a moment when the self no longer fits into its old shape. During this pause, transformation becomes possible. Not immediately, not easily, but inevitably. This is why many people emerge from suffering with a deeper sense of empathy, clarity, strength, wisdom, or purpose. Not because suffering is good, but because it is powerful. Because it forces growth in the places we never intended to grow. But before transformation comes, there is often a moment of stillness. A moment where the mind can no longer fight, the heart can no longer resist, and the body can no longer push forward. A moment of surrender, not defeat, but release. And so we move now to that quiet threshold, the moment when the descent pauses, when something inside loosens its grip, when the darkness no longer feels like an enemy, but like a space where the body and mind can rest. Take a slow breath. We are entering the stillness. Moments of surrender. Moments of surrender. There comes a point in every descent when the mind grows tired of fighting, when the heart, exhausted from resisting what has already happened, begins to loosen its grip, when the nervous system, overwhelmed from trying to control the uncontrollable, starts to slow. This moment is quiet, not peaceful at first, but still. A fragile calm that feels like standing at the bottom of a long fall, unsure of what comes next. This is the moment of surrender. Take a slow breath here. Not forced, not guided, just natural, just human. Surrender is often misunderstood. We imagine it as giving up, collapsing, letting darkness win. But true surrender is something very different. It is the softening that happens when resistance becomes too heavy to carry. It is the body's ancient wisdom stepping in when the mind has reached its limit. When the nervous system is in crisis, in fear, in stress, in overwhelm, it tries to protect us through action, through fighting, through fleeing, through freezing. But when all these strategies exhaust themselves, a turning occurs. The system shifts, not into defeat, but into conservation, into stillness, into the quiet that precedes change. Surrender is not the end of the journey. It is the pause that makes transformation possible. Breathe gently. Feel the subtle rise of your chest. Feel the slow release of the exhale. Moments like this steady the nervous system, even when the heart aches. Many people describe surrender as a collapse, but internally it feels more like floating. The fight dissolves. The tension drops. The frantic mental grasping loosens. For the first time in a long time, there is space, not comfort, but space. Surrender often happens in stages. The first stage is exhaustion, when the body simply cannot maintain the struggle. The second is acceptance, not of the situation, but of the reality that resisting it is only creating more pain. And the third stage is opening a small, delicate willingness to feel, to breathe, to notice life again. In trauma therapy, surrender is seen as the moment the system stops bracing, when the body stops fighting itself, when muscles soften, when breath deepens, when the mind begins to settle into, this is what is, and I am here with it. This is not a cognitive decision. It is a physiological shift. Let your breath slow just slightly. Let your hands soften, even minimally. Not as instruction, but as a reminder that the body knows how to settle when given permission. Surrender is the opposite of resistance. Resistance says, this should not be happening. Surrender says, this is what is happening, and I am here. In this space, something remarkable occurs. Clarity begins to form. Not clarity of answers, but clarity of presence. We begin to feel the difference between what we cannot control and what we can. Between what belongs to us and what never did. Between what is ending and what might someday begin. In mythology, surrender often appears as the moment when the hero ceases struggling against the darkness and instead listens to it. Inanna, stripped of everything, stands still before the shadow. Odin hangs on the tree, not fighting the wound, but yielding to it. The Buddha sits beneath the Bodhi tree and stops running from his own mind. This moment of stillness is where wisdom enters. Surrender is the threshold between descent and renewal. When you stop resisting the pain, not by force, but by exhaustion, openness, or honesty, you make space for something new to begin. You allow the nervous system to recalibrate. You allow the psyche to reorganize. You allow grief to move, trauma to process, identity to shift. Surrender does not answer the question, why did this happen? Instead, it gently whispers, now that it has happened, how will you live? Take a soft, steady breath. Feel the quiet around you. Notice the stillness inside. In moments of surrender, a seed is planted, the beginning of renewal, not visible yet, not growing yet, but present, waiting in the soil of your being. From this soft ground, resilience begins to form. Neuroplasticity awakens. New pathways of thought, emotion, and identity start to take shape. Our next step is into that quiet miracle, the beginnings of change. The small, almost invisible ways the mind and body rebuild after darkness. Let the breath settle. Let the shoulders soften. And let us move into the next chapter, the seeds of renewal. Renewal does not arrive with a sudden burst of light. It does not sweep away the darkness in one dramatic moment. It begins quietly, subtly, often invisibly, like the first root of a seed pushing gently into the soil long before anything breaks the surface. Healing starts the same way, silently, deep inside, where awareness has not yet reached. Take a slow, easy breath. Feel the gentle movement of the body. We are entering a softer terrain now, not free of darkness, but illuminated from within. After surrender, the nervous system begins to reorganize. Not because the pain has vanished, but because the body finally has space to recover. In this space, the brain's capacity for change, neuroplasticity, becomes active. New synapses form. Old patterns loosen. The emotional circuitry, once overwhelmed, begins to stabilize. This is the biology of renewal. It is quiet, patient, non-linear. The first signs often appear as small, unexpected shifts. A moment of calm in the middle of a heavy day. A breath that feels deeper than usual. A thought that doesn't spiral the way it once did. An hour of sleep that feels restful. A tiny spark of curiosity returning to the mind. A sudden clarity about something that once felt impossible to face. These are the earliest roots of healing. Fragile, but real. Pause for a breath. Notice the subtle rise and fall. Renewal begins with awareness, not effort. Psychologically, the seeds of renewal are planted when we allow ourselves to feel. Not in overwhelming waves, but in small, tolerable moments. Each time we acknowledge an emotion, the nervous system integrates it. Each time we notice a thought without collapsing into it, the mind rewires. Each time we reach out even slightly, the heart remembers connection. Healing is less a heroic leap and more a gentle accumulation of small returns. The return of presence, the return of breath, the return of meaning, the return of the self. In trauma research, this early stage of recovery is known as re-establishing safety. No, it is not about solving the past. It is about creating stability in the present. When the body feels safe, even for a few minutes, it sends signals to the brain that allow healing to occur. This stability is the soil in which renewal grows. Take another soft breath. Let it settle through the ribs, through the belly, through the body. Emotionally, renewal begins when the heart remembers that it can feel more than pain. Not joy yet, but curiosity, warmth, relief, a small softening around the edges of grief. A moment when the world does not feel as heavy as before. These shifts are easy to miss because they rarely announce themselves. But they accumulate, they deepen, they spread. In mythology, the seeds of renewal are often symbolized by light returning in the underworld, or by a guide appearing at the darkest moment. The hero is still in the night, but something new has entered the story, a whisper of direction, a spark of hope. But in real life, renewal is not a guide who appears. It is a sensation, a change in texture within the mind, a warmth in the chest, a thought that says, maybe I can survive this. Maybe I can move forward. Maybe something new can grow from here. Maybe is the beginning of transformation. As these seeds take root, people often begin to feel a growing desire for connection. After loneliness, the heart remembers that it was not made to suffer in isolation. After darkness, the psyche remembers that it needs mirrors, stories, companions, guidance to find the way back to the surface. But renewal does not happen alone. Even the strongest mind, even the bravest heart, heals better when it is not isolated. Humans require connection for recovery. We require witnesses. We require stories. We require community. And so the next chapter leads us to the figures real and symbolic who help guide us through the dark. The mentors, the loved ones, the ancestral voices, the rituals, the myths, the moments of human presence that become lifelines. Take a breath. Feel the ground beneath you. You're not walking alone. You are approaching the part of the journey where guidance appears. Let us now step toward those guides in the dark. Guides in the dark. No one is meant to walk through darkness alone. Not in myth, not in psychology, not in the deep, private landscape of the human heart. Even when the descent feels solitary, even when the world seems distant, even when isolation grips the mind, there are always guides, subtle, quiet, often unnoticed, who help us find our way through. Take a slow, gentle breath. Let the inhale soften the chest. Let the exhale settle the body. This chapter is about connection, presence, and the quiet forms of guidance that illuminate the night. Throughout history, cultures have understood that the journey into darkness requires help. Heroes rarely descend alone. They are accompanied by mentors, guardians, spirits, ancestors, or symbols of wisdom. These figures are not simply characters, they represent the very real psychological support systems that humans need during suffering. In real life, our guides take many forms. A friend who listens without trying to fix us. A therapist who holds space for our pain. A parent who offers quiet reassurance. A partner who stays through the storm. A memory of someone who loved us well. A book that speaks truth when we cannot articulate our own. A spiritual tradition that offers ritual, grounding, or meaning. Even nature, a forest, an ocean, the night sky can become a companion when the inner world feels heavy. Guidance does not always arrive as advice. Often it arrives as presence. Breathe softly. Feel the way the body responds to even the idea of companionship. Humans are wired for co-regulation, the calming effect of another steady nervous system. When someone stays with us in our darkness, our physiology changes. Heart rate slows, cortisol drops, vagal tone increases. The body begins to relax into connection. This is why people say, "I feel better just being near you," even when no words were spoken. It is not sentiment. It is biology. In trauma healing, the presence of a stable, compassionate witness is often more transformative than any technique. Pain becomes more bearable when someone else acknowledges it. Shame dissolves when someone sees us fully and does not turn away. Fear softens when someone says, "I'm here," and means it. But guides in the dark are not always human. Sometimes the guidance that shapes us most comes from stories. Myths that remind us we are not the first to endure suffering. Poetry that articulates the emotions we cannot name. Music that mirrors the weight inside the heart. Even silence itself can become a guide, a soft, listening presence that allows the psyche to breathe. Pause for a breath. Feel the subtle expansion in the chest. Feel the grounding beneath your body. You are not alone in this moment either. You are accompanied by awareness. In many traditions, the underworld is filled not only with shadows, but with guides, psychopomps, helpers, inner voices, or ancestral spirits. These figures represent the parts of ourselves that awaken when we are in need. Inner wisdom, inner strength, inner truth. Parts of us that were quiet during the day but become luminous at night. Sometimes guidance comes from within. A small voice that says, "Take one step." A feeling that says, "Rest." A memory that says, "You have survived before." A whisper of intuition that rises from a deeper place than fear. This inner guide often emerges only after surrender, when the noise of resistance has quieted enough for subtle truths to surface. Guides in the dark also include community rituals, gatherings, cultures, practices that hold us when we cannot hold ourselves. Humans have always created shared spaces for grief and transformation. Funerals, ceremonies, vigils, storytelling circles, healing rites, moments where suffering is witnessed, honored, shared. Even today, in a world of distractions and screens, the human need for community remains unchanged. We heal in connection. We find meaning through stories. We rise because someone else reaches out a hand. Guidance is never about removing the darkness. It is about helping us navigate it, helping us remember the way forward, helping us see that even here in the quiet, heavy places of the soul, we are still connected to something larger. Take another soft breath. Let the exhale lengthen gently. The presence of guidance calms the body, softens the mind, and prepares the heart for what comes next. For once we have received guidance from others, from story, from memory, from within, the journey begins to shift. The path turns upward. The inner gravity lessens. The darkness, once overwhelming, begins to thin. This is the moment of re-emergence. Not a dramatic return to the light, but a slow rising. A step, a breath, small reclaiming of life. Let your breath settle. Let the body ground. And let us move now into the next chapter, re-emergence. There comes a moment in every descent when the darkness no longer feels endless. Not because the pain has vanished, not because the past has been resolved, but because something inside begins to lift. A subtle shift, a quiet awakening, a sense that the weight is not as heavy as before. The world, once dimmed, begins to regain its contours. This is re-emergence, the slow, deliberate rising from the depths. Take a gentle breath here. Feel the softness of the inhale, the ease of the exhale. Re-emergence always begins with breath. Unlike the dramatic resurfacings described in myth, real-life rising is gradual. It moves through the body first. A little more energy, a little more clarity, a little more capacity to feel, to think, to connect. It is not a return to who you were before the descent. That version of you no longer exists. It is the birth of a new configuration of the self. After darkness, the nervous system shifts out of survival mode. The amygdala softens its vigilance. The prefrontal cortex regains its ability to plan, reflect, and imagine. The vagus nerve begins to steady the rhythm of the heart. These are biological markers of re-emergence, the body reclaiming balance, the mind reclaiming space. Life does not instantly become easier, but it becomes possible again. Pause here. Feel your presence. Feel the quiet energy in your breath. This is the sensation of re-emergence in real time. Gentle, steady, grounded. Emotionally, re-emergence feels like small returns. A return of interest in something you once loved. A return of laughter, even briefly. A return of curiosity. A return of connection. A return of hope, fragile but unmistakable. These returns do not erase the descent, they rise through it. They grow from the soil of what was learned, endured, and surrendered. In many trauma survivors, re-emergence appears as the ability to contain emotion without being consumed by it. A feeling of, I can hold this now. The fear that once overwhelmed becomes less threatening. The shame that once silenced begins to loosen its grip. The grief that once crushed now moves through the heart instead of burying it. This does not mean the darkness is gone. It means you have learned to walk with it. Take another soft breath. Let it travel gently through the body. Re-emergence is a partnership between pain and strength. In mythology, after the descent, the hero always rises transformed. They do not return to the world unchanged. They return wiser, deeper, expanded, carrying something precious gained in the underworld. Similarly, in real life, re-emergence brings gifts that were impossible to access in the light. Clarity about what matters. Humility that softens the ego. Compassion born from pain. Strength forged in the quiet. Self-knowledge carved by truth. A deeper appreciation for presence, connection, and life. These gifts are not rewards for suffering. They are the natural consequences of moving through darkness with awareness. Breathe slowly. Notice the sense of internal space. Re-emergence is spacious. It creates room for possibility. As people rise from emotional descent, they often speak of a new relationship with themselves. Not a perfect one, but a more honest one. They see their vulnerabilities clearly, yet without judgment. They notice their needs and treat them with care. They recognize their patterns and choose with more intention. This is integration beginning to take shape. Re-emergence is not the end of the journey. It is the bridge between breakdown and transformation. A threshold where the self begins to assemble its new shape. Where the insights gained in darkness begin to blend with everyday life. But there is still one more step before transformation is complete, the conscious integration of the darkness itself. Not as shame, not as fear, but as wisdom. Take one more breath. Feel the gentle, steady presence inside you. You have walked through descent. You have surrendered. You have begun to rise. Now we move into the deeper work, the integration of everything learned in the night. Let us step forward into the next chapter, integrating the darkness. Re-emergence brings you back into the world. Integration brings the world back into you. It is the stage where everything you discovered, felt, endured, and revealed during the descent begins to take shape in your identity. Not as a burden, not as a wound to hide, but as a truth to live with. A truth that deepens you. Take a soft breath. Feel the air enter, expand, release. Integration requires gentleness. It is not something forced. It is something absorbed. To integrate darkness does not mean to move on. It means to weave the experience into your understanding of yourself. To allow pain to become part of your story without letting it define your entire story. It means recognizing that what happened shaped you, but does not confine you. Integration begins when you stop asking, "How do I get rid of the darkness?" and start asking, "What has the darkness taught me?" This shift is profound. It changes the relationship between you and your suffering. Instead of seeing the dark as an invader, you begin to see it as a teacher, difficult, painful, but transformative. Breathe gently. Let the body soften into this moment. Integration requires a relaxed mind, a curious heart, and a steady breath. Psychologically, integration is the process of bringing the conscious and unconscious back into harmony. The parts of you that were hidden in the shadow, the fears, the unspoken grief, the unprocessed trauma, the unmet needs are no longer fragmented. They come into awareness. They become acknowledged. They become part of the whole. This is why people who have walked through darkness often speak with a kind of calm depth, a presence, a groundedness. They have met themselves in places others spend their entire lives avoiding. They know their own depths. They know their own fragility. And they know their own strength. Integration is not about perfection. It is about honesty. Take another breath. Let the air feel like a gentle companion. Integration is the art of staying present with what once overwhelmed you. There are several layers to this process. The emotional layer, feeling the emotions that were previously buried instead of resisting them. The cognitive layer, making meaning from what happened, understanding patterns, and recognizing shifts in identity. The somatic layer, releasing the body's stored tension, trauma, and bracing responses. The behavioral layer, changing how you act, choose, and respond based on your new self-awareness. The spiritual or existential layer, connecting the experience to a larger sense of purpose, truth, or human belonging. All of these layers unfold gradually. Transformation has its own timing. Mythology teaches that after the hero rises from the underworld, they return carrying something of value, the elixir, the truth, the flame, the wisdom. But the true transformation occurs not during the return, but during the integration of what they carried into their daily life. In real life, integration looks like setting boundaries you once feared to set, speaking truth you once hid, leaving situations that harm you, entering situations that nourish you, listening to your needs with kindness, forgiving yourself for what you did to survive, allowing yourself to feel without shame, choosing with awareness instead of instinct. These are not dramatic gestures. They are quiet shifts that accumulate into a new identity. Pause for a breath. Feel the warmth or stillness in the body. Integration is taking shape within you, even now. One of the most important aspects of integration is self-compassion. Not the soft, sentimental concept often discussed casually, but the deep, grounded form, the kind that recognizes suffering as part of being human and offers understanding instead of judgment. Self-compassion is the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. Another aspect is narrative. The way you tell the story of your darkness determines how it lives within you. When the story is told with shame, the darkness continues to wound. When the story is told with honesty and compassion, the darkness becomes wisdom, not justification, not glorification. Wisdom. This is why therapy, journaling, storytelling, and conversation can be so powerful. They help reorganize the meaning of what happened. Integration also requires patience. You cannot rush the assimilation of the experiences that reshaped you. You cannot force clarity or forgiveness or closure. Integration is less about effort and more about allowing. Take a slow breath. Let the exhale be long, steady, quiet. You are not trying to fix the darkness. You are making space for it to transform. As integration deepens, something beautiful begins to emerge, a sense of direction, a subtle clarity, a feeling that the future is not just something to endure, but something you can step into with intention. This leads us to the final stage of the journey, from darkness into possibility, into identity renewed, into purpose refined, into the quiet, growing light ahead. Let your breath settle. Let your mind soften. Now we step into the last chapter, the light ahead. Light after darkness is not a return to the world you once knew. It is the beginning of a world shaped by everything you survived, everything you learned, and everything you became. This light is not blinding, not overwhelming. It is gentle. The kind of light that rises slowly over a horizon, illuminating the landscape of a new self. Take a soft breath. Let the inhale fill you with quiet clarity. Let the exhale release whatever the body no longer needs. This is the final movement of the journey, not an ending, but a continuation into a new chapter of life. The light ahead is not the opposite of darkness. It is the integration of darkness. A brightness deepened by shadow. A wholeness shaped by everything you endured. Many people think healing means eliminating pain, but true healing means transforming the relationship you have with it. Pain becomes information instead of identity. Fear becomes a signal instead of a sentence. Grief becomes a companion instead of a collapse. Darkness becomes a teacher instead of a threat. This is the light ahead, not the absence of struggle, but the growth that struggle made possible. Take another gentle breath. Feel how the body responds to the idea of possibility. The light ahead lives in that reaction, in the way the breath deepens, in the way the heart softens, in the way curiosity returns to the mind. As you move forward from the descent, certain truths become clear. You are not the same person you were before the darkness. You are more aware, more compassionate, more grounded, more resilient, more honest with yourself, more connected to what matters. Your values shift. Superficial goals lose their grip. Meaning becomes more important than approval. Connection becomes more important than performance. Authenticity becomes the foundation of your choices. Your perception changes. You recognize the fragility of life, but you also recognize its beauty. You see the world not as a place to conquer, but as a place to participate in. You listen more deeply. You love more intentionally. You choose more consciously. These are not small changes. They are the architecture of a new life. Pause for a breath. Feel the spaciousness in the body. Feel the presence in the moment. This is what the light ahead feels like. Space, presence, possibility. The light ahead is not the end of struggle, but the beginning of strength. It allows you to move through the world without being consumed by your own shadows. It lets you hold your pain with compassion instead of fear. It lets you carry the memory of darkness without letting it define your identity. In mythology, the return from the underworld is always accompanied by a gift, not a literal object, but an inner transformation, a deeper wisdom, a sacred insight, a renewed sense of purpose. The protagonist returns not as who they were, but as who they have become. The same is true for you. The gift you bring back from your descent is your new understanding of yourself, your clarity, your resilience, your compassion, your strength. This journey through darkness has given you something that cannot be taken, the knowledge that even in your lowest moments, you are capable of rising. Even in your deepest pain, you are capable of growth. Even when the world collapses, you are capable of rebuilding. Take a slow breath. Feel the truth of this settling within you. The light ahead is not a destination. It is a direction, a way of walking through the world with intention, openness, and courage. It is the quiet confidence that you can meet whatever comes next with the strength you did not know you had. It is the understanding that life will bring more darkness, but you now carry the tools, the insight, and the depth to navigate it with grace. The light ahead also brings something even more profound, a renewed relationship with hope. Not naive hope, not blind optimism, but grounded hope. Hope shaped by truth. Hope that has passed through the underworld and emerged wiser. This kind of hope is powerful. It does not deny suffering. It transforms it. It turns pain into purpose, loss into clarity, darkness into understanding. As you move forward, You carry the memory of your descent, not as a wound, but as wisdom. You walk with the knowledge that you have survived what once felt impossible. You have grown in the places you thought would break you. You have found meaning in the spaces where you once felt empty. Take one final breath. Deep, steady, gentle. Let it fill you with the sense of completion, of continuation, of possibility. The journey through darkness is never about escaping the night. It is about discovering the light that grows from within it. A light that guides you forward. A light you now carry with you. A light shaped by everything you endured and everything you became. This is the light ahead.